The note was small, just 3 lines neatly folded placed beside a cold cup of tea. "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. D." That was all. No long goodbye. No suitcase dragged to the door. No final hug. Just silence, where a marriage had once been. Silence that crept into the walls, under the floorboards, into Rosemary's chest like a cold fog. She stared at the note for what felt like hours. First in disbelief, then denial, then nothing at all. The teacup stayed on the table for 3 days. She didn't touch it. The silence grew teeth. It bit down hard. It had been 7 years of trying. Doctors, pills, prayers. Holding her breath every time her period was late, only to exhale in disappointment. David had smiled at first, comforting her, telling her it would happen in time. But over the years, the smiles faded. The silences grew longer. And one morning, he left. No conversation. No door slammed. Just the sound of a future crumbling without fanfare. Rosemary was 35 and alone. Her womb had never held life. Her home, once filled with scented candles and playlists called Sunday mornings, now echoed with emptiness. Friends had stopped checking in. Family, tired of her polite rejections for gatherings and holidays, gave her space she never asked. For each morning, she woke up and stared at the ceiling, wondering what she was supposed to do now. Who was she without a husband? Without a child? There were moments, brief and sharp, where she'd place her hand on her belly and whisper, "I would have loved you." Moments where the grief felt physical, like her chest might cave in. But always, she'd push it down, brush her teeth, make weak coffee, and sit at the empty table. It was in that fog that she stumbled upon the center. Not a sign from God, no divine lightning, just a poster pinned on a grocery store board. Volunteers. Needed. Child Welfare Center, weekends, all hands welcome. She tore the paper off and stuffed it in her bag before she could change her mind. Saturday came, and Rosemary walked into the center wearing jeans too neat for the job and a cardigan with tissue in the pocket. The director, a brisk woman named Anita, greeted her with an arched eyebrow. "You're new." Yes. Just wanted to help." "Good. No one wants the under-10s today. They're yours." She was led to a room that smelled of chalk, peanut butter, and unbrushed teeth. 5 boys sat in a corner, backs to the wall, knees tucked. Clothes mismatched, hair unevenly cut. Their eyes followed her like animals, unsure if she came with food or fire. "Brothers," Anita muttered beside her. "Parents died in a fire 6 months ago. No relatives stepped up. People say they're a package deal no one wants." Rosemary blinked. Her heart did something strange. It didn't ache. It paused, like it was listening. She sat down slowly on a low bench. The eldest, tall for his age, maybe 9, watched her the hardest. His body shielded the others like a silent soldier. His name, she would later learn, was Henry. Sharp, protective, quiet as stone. Beside him, Kenneth sat fiddling with a plastic spoon. He didn't speak, but kept glancing at her shoes like they might give away her secrets. The twins, Joshua and Joseph, sat cross-legged, whispering to each other in code only they understood. They wore matching red hoodies, both stained, one with a rip in the sleeve. One smirked. The other stared blankly at her face. And then there was the youngest, Divine, cheeks round and tear-tracked. He sat closest to the wall, one sock missing. His thumb never left his mouth. "Don't expect much," Anita warned. "They've been bounced around too many times. They don't open up." But that night, Rosemary couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, her room lit only by the blinking streetlight outside, and saw their faces behind her eyelids, those eyes. That silence, that look of waiting for something bad to happen. Something bad always did. She thought of how she used to wait. Wait for a child. Wait for David to come home smiling. wait for life to start. Now maybe life was waiting on her. Sunday morning, she went back. Anita raised an eyebrow but said nothing. This time she brought apples, a comb, and patience. She let the boys ignore her, let them pretend she wasn't there. She just sat on the floor peeling apples with a plastic knife and telling stories she made up on the spot. By Wednesday, Kenneth spoke. "You always wear the same cardigan." "Maybe I like it," she replied. "Maybe you're poor," Joseph teased. "Maybe I'm smart," she said. "And save my money for pizza." All 5 heads turned. Pizza? Weeks passed. Then months. Rosemary rearranged her schedule. She learned their stories, their wounds. Henry had nightmares. Kenneth hated loud noises. The twins couldn't fall asleep unless their beds were pushed together. Divine flinched if someone raised a hand too fast. But in the middle of their chaos, she found something unspoken. Not peace, never that, but purpose. She started packing lunches with extra fruit, bringing spare socks, memorizing birthdays. And each night as she walked back to her quiet house, she'd whisper, "Maybe, just maybe." Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. She was called into the center for a meeting. Anita looked unusually tense. "We've found a placement," she said. "Out-of-state foster home. Together. It's rare." Rosemary felt her stomach drop. "When?" "Next week. The foster couple has 3 kids already, but the state's offering support." She nodded slowly. "They'll be okay," Anita added. "Yeah," Rosemary murmured. "I'm sure they will." But that night she didn't sleep. Her house, somehow, felt colder than ever. She sat at the same table where the note had once been. The wood still bore the stain of that old cup of tea, and she thought of 5 boys, of apples, of laughter that broke out lately, more often, of Henry's slow smile, Divine's quiet trust. She stood up, walked to the counter, opened her laptop, and typed, "Can a single woman adopt multiple siblings in her state?" The form was long. 23 pages of government speak, legal language, and blanks that stared at Rosemary like they dared her to try. She sat at the kitchen table, the same one where everything had started and everything had ended, and stared at the first question. "Do you currently have any dependents?" she wrote. "Not yet." The first time she said the word out loud, it almost didn't sound real. "I want to adopt them," she told Anita one afternoon after volunteering. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly around the handle of her purse. Anita blinked. "All 5? Rosemary nodded. The woman laughed, short and sharp. "You don't even have a partner." "I know." "Or a big house." "I know." "Or money." "I know." "Then how? Why?" "Because I don't want them to be someone else's maybe. I want them to be my yes." Anita didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she leaned back and exhaled through her nose. "You'll need to pass an evaluation, and interviews, and home inspections, and God help you, psychological clearance." Rosemary straightened her spine. "Then schedule them." The evaluation process was brutal. Inspectors poked through her cupboards, tested her smoke alarms, measured the distance between her stove and her sink. A social worker named Miriam asked, her questions that felt more like surgical incisions. "Do you have experience with trauma?" "No, but I've lived through enough of my own to understand pain." "What would you do if one of them lashes out at you physically?" "Not take it personally. What if 2 of them get violent with each other?" "Teach them to use words," Miriam scribbled in her notebook. "You realize most people wouldn't even take 1 child." "I'm not most people." Word spread in the neighborhood quickly. Rosemary had never been the type to attract gossip, but now whispers followed her down the street. She's adopting orphans? All 5? She can't even afford a decent car. Maybe she's lonely. Some people will do anything when they're desperate. She ignored them. At the market, She bought in bulk. At the pharmacy, she learned which bandages were cheapest. At night, she repainted the boys' future bedrooms, scrubbing the walls while gospel music played softly in the background. She painted each one differently. Henry's, navy blue, solid and calm. Kenneth's, soft gray with shelves for books. They. Twins, bright green and orange, divided down the middle like a line in the sand. Divine's, sky blue with star stickers on the ceiling. By the time the social worker returned for the final inspection, Rosemary's small house had transformed into something far more valuable than square footage. It was ready. The day she was approved, she cried in the car. Not the small kind of crying. The kind where the body shakes, and you don't know what part of you is grieving and what part is breaking open with joy. A week later, she walked back into the center. The boys were playing with mismatched toys, the twins arguing over a plastic robot. Henry saw her first. She knelt beside him and handed him a small envelope. He opened it slowly, his brow furrowing as he pulled out 5 photographs, one of each freshly painted room. Then a 6th photo, the 5 of them standing in front. Of her house, edited with the words, "Home," scrawled in marker. Henry looked at her. "What does this mean?" She smiled. "It means I'm not asking to visit you anymore. I'm asking you to come live with me." The silence that followed was thick with disbelief. Joshua whispered, "Like, all of us?" "All of you," she confirmed. Divine burst into tears. The first week was chaos. Shoes were everywhere. Someone poured juice in the plant pot. Divine wet the bed every night. Kenneth locked himself in the bathroom twice. Joseph tried to microwave a spoon, just to see what happens. Joshua told a neighbor dog to bite anyone who bullies his brother. Henry barely spoke. But at night, Rosemary found him pacing the hallway, checking each door, counting heads. They didn't trust her yet, not fully, but they were watching, waiting, testing, and she passed every test. There were hard moments, of course, like when Kenneth flinched after Rosemary raised her voice and didn't speak for 2 days, or when Henry refused to celebrate his birthday because he said dead people don't get birthdays, or the time the twins broke a window playing indoor soccer and swore they'd run away rather than face the punishment. Rosemary didn't punish. She made them sweep the glass, then taught them how to tape cardboard until the window could be fixed. She let them paint the patch themselves. The colors didn't match. It looked ridiculous, but they laughed together for the first time. At the school, things didn't go smoothly. Teachers called often. Joshua refuses to sit still. Kenneth doesn't talk. Divine cries for you every recess. Joseph won't stop drawing in the margins. Rosemary started packing notes in their lunchboxes. You're smart. You're worth it. You belong. Sometimes the notes came back torn. Sometimes they didn't. But she kept writing them. The neighborhood didn't soften immediately. When they walked together to the store, people stared. Some with curiosity, some with disapproval. A man once asked if they were part of a program. "They're part of my family," Rosemary replied coldly. It didn't stop the whispers, but it stopped mattering. One evening, a storm knocked the power out. The house went dark. Divine screamed. The twins argued over who had the flashlight last. Kenneth sat in the corner, hugging his knees. Rosemary lit a single candle and placed it in the center of the room. "Sit close," she said. They did. She began to sing, softly at first, then louder. A lullaby from her childhood. One by one, the boys joined in, Henry last. That night, something shifted. Not everything, but something. One morning, weeks later, Rosemary walked into the living room to find Kenneth at the window, drawing in a notebook. "What are you working on?" she asked. "A logo." "For what?" He looked up. For us. For our family. She knelt beside him. It was a rough sketch, 5 stick figures in front of a crooked house, but above them was a crown. A crown? She smiled. Yeah, he shrugged. Because we're not broken. We're royalty. The toaster caught fire on a Wednesday. Not a full fire, just enough to fill the kitchen with smoke and make Divine scream like the walls were falling. Joseph grabbed the cereal box and used it like a fire extinguisher, sending cornflakes flying across the counter. Kenneth unplugged the toaster with surgical precision, while Joshua stood on a chair with a wooden spoon raised like a sword, yelling, "Get out, demon!" Rosemary stood in the doorway, barefoot, holding a cup of half-warmed tea. This was breakfast. Now, the early months were loud. There was always something. Lost homework, wet towels, soggy shoes left in the hallway. Someone spilled sugar, and Divine walked through it with his socks. The twins discovered wrestling. Kenneth discovered sarcasm. Henry discovered his voice, but only when arguing about bedtime. Rosemary tried to keep up. The grocery budget barely stretched. Dinner often meant rice, beans, and whatever vegetables were on sale. She learned how to cut hair with YouTube tutorials and used old curtains to sew makeshift superhero capes because Joseph insisted they were essential gear. She gave up on silence. Silence didn't exist anymore, but something else had taken its place. Life. The emotional storms were harder than the practical ones. Henry, usually stoic, had a sharp tongue when pushed. "You're not our real mom," he snapped one night, arms crossed in the doorway after Rosemary told him he couldn't. Walk to school alone, she didn't flinch. "I know. So stop acting like it." "I won't," she said simply. "I'll never stop acting like I love you." That shut him up. He didn't apologize, but the next day he asked her if she needed help folding laundry. It was enough. Divine had nightmares. Loud, heartbreaking ones. He'd wake up crying, calling for his mother. Rosemary started keeping a folded blanket at the foot of his bed, just in case she needed to sleep beside him on the floor. Kenneth withdrew when things got tense. He built worlds inside notebooks, hiding between the lines. Rosemary left small, notes on his pillow. "Your thoughts matter. I'm proud of your brain. You're seen." Sometimes the notes disappeared. Sometimes they came back with sketches drawn on the back. Monsters, kings, rockets, buildings. She framed the first one. The twins were the noisiest and the most affectionate when they weren't fighting. Joseph had a temper. Joshua was a button pusher, but when one got hurt, the other cried. They played pranks on Rosemary constantly. Salt in the sugar jar, plastic lizards in her shoes, switched identities at parent-teacher meetings. She caught on fast. One morning, they woke up to their own prank. Both their beds pushed into the garden with "Free Boys" gently used signs taped to them. They howled with laughter. The first real moment of peace came on a rainy Sunday. The power went out again. No TV, no internet, no excuses. Rosemary lit candles and made jollof rice with whatever she had left in the fridge. She played old gospel songs from her phone speaker. Divine started humming. Kenneth followed, then Joseph, then Joshua, and then, without prompting, they were singing. 5 voices, off-key, out of rhythm, but full of something new, something whole. Henry didn't sing, but he stood in the corner, swaying gently. Rosemary wiped a tear and let them lead the chorus. Rain poured outside. The twins kicked the door open and ran into the yard barefoot, howling at the sky. "Come on, Mama!" Joseph yelled. She hesitated, then shrugged, kicked off her slippers, and ran into the rain with them. Divine spun like a top. Kenneth slipped and laughed for the first time in days. Rosemary lifted her arms and let the rain soak her hair, her dress, her past. They danced like no one was watching, because no one was. And if they had been, she wouldn't have cared. There were setbacks, always. Henry punched a boy at school who called Divine weird. Rosemary got called in, sat across from the principal, and defended him with a quiet ferocity that shocked even her. Afterward, she didn't yell. She sat with Henry in the car in silence. Then she said, "I get it." He turned to her slowly. "You do?" "Of course. Family isn't just love. It's protection." He didn't say anything, but that night, he did the dishes without being asked. Money was a constant shadow. She picked up weekend shifts at a diner, sold old clothes online, took up tutoring in the evenings. Still, she couldn't always make it work. One night, she sat at the table with bills spread out in front of her. Henry saw. He didn't say anything, but an hour later she found 5 crumpled dollars and a note inside her coat pocket. "I found this in the couch cushions. Maybe it helps." "H," she cried, but not for the money. At school, things began to shift. Kenneth joined the robotics club. Joseph got picked to design a mural for the library. Divine sang in a talent show and froze halfway through. Rosemary walked up to the stage, stood beside him, and sang the rest of the song at his side. They didn't win, but the applause was deafening. Sunday became sacred. Each week they cooked something together: rice, stew, baked potatoes, fried plantains. Everyone had a job. Everyone had flour in their hair or oil on their shirts. Then they'd sit around the table, cramped but together, and talk. No phones, no interruptions, just stories, jokes, arguments about which superhero could beat the others, and always laughter. One night, as Rosemary tucked Divine into bed, he asked, "Are you going to stay forever?" She paused, then quietly, "Yes, if you'll let me." He nodded, pulling the blanket higher. "Then I'll stay too." She kissed his forehead. "Deal." Late one evening, Rosemary sat on the porch with a mug of warm tea, finally finished, finally hot. Henry joined her without a word. After a while, he said, "You know, I think we're gonna be okay." She looked at him, at his shoulders now broader, at his eyes more settled. "I think so too," she whispered. He smiled. It wasn't big, it wasn't long, but it was real. The first time Henry packed a bag to leave, Rosemary didn't cry, not in front of him at least. She watched him roll his neatly folded clothes into the duffel bag they'd bought on sale, watched him double-check his list, zip everything with his usual quiet efficiency. He was 18 now, taller than her, voice deep, shoulders squared with that familiar calm that had always made the younger boys feel safe. "Don't forget your ID," she said. Henry nodded, then paused. "You packed it already. Bottom pouch," she smiled. Of course she had. He had earned it, every bit of it. 4 years of top grades, endless study nights, tutoring on weekends. He'd been accepted to a top university, on scholarship, studying engineering, just like he always said he would. He didn't say much that morning, just hugged her tight at the front door. When she stepped back, she saw it, the flicker of hesitation in his eyes. "Call when you get there," she said. "I will. Text when you need anything." "I will." He hesitated again, then, almost too softly to hear, "Thanks, Mama." And then he was gone. That first week, Rosemary kept setting, out 6 plates instead of 5. The boys noticed. "Should we eat in his room?" Joseph asked one night, a spoon halfway to his mouth. "No," Rosemary said gently. "We leave it as it is, for when he comes back." Joshua smiled. "Told you she'd get all sentimental." Kenneth was next, to change. While Henry pursued engineering, Kenneth stayed home, quiet as ever, tapping away on his laptop deep into the night. Rosemary often found him asleep at the table, surrounded by open tabs, empty cocoa cups, and notebook sketches. Then, one morning he burst into the kitchen waving his phone. "It's live!" "What is?" "My blog. It's up. First post's already getting shares." Rosemary blinked. People read this? 37 so far. But look at the comments. One guy wants to feature me. The blog, Bitewise, offered tech tips, coding, tutorials, and snappy insights with dry humor that was unmistakably Kenneth. Within a month, he had sponsors reaching out. Within 3, he was earning more than Rosemary ever had from tutoring. Still, he refused to move out. "Wi-Fi here's better," he said. But Rosemary knew better. He just wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. The twins had never followed rules. Why would they start now? At 17, Joshua and Joseph decided to launch a fashion brand from their bedroom closet. They borrowed Rosemary's iron, turned the garage into a sewing space, and spray-painted "No Adults Allowed" on the door. She pretended not to see it. They sold their first 10 shirts at school. The designs were bold, graffiti-inspired, hand-painted, full of mismatched symmetry and defiant color. They called it King and King. When Rosemary asked who was which king, they said, "We switch daily. Keeps us humble." Within a year, they had a stall at the weekend market. Then an online shop. Then shout-outs from local influencers. Divine, the baby, grew quietly into his voice. It started with church, then school performances, then talent, shows. His voice, once soft and unsure, deepened into something rich, something magnetic. At 16, he sang solo at a community event. Rosemary sat in the front row, clutching her hands like prayer, watching as her youngest closed his eyes and let the first note rise. It wasn't just beautiful, it was haunting. The crowd went silent, then roared. After the show, a producer approached. "He's special," he said. "That voice doesn't come around often." Rosemary didn't blink. "I know. Life moved faster after that. There were rehearsals, travel, video shoots, interviews. Divine handled it all with a calm grace, but still slipped into Rosemary's bed some nights just to fall asleep to her humming. "Does this mean I'm famous now?" he asked once. "You were always famous to me," she whispered. The house changed, room by room. First, Henry's became an office. Then Kenneth moved out, only 3 blocks away, but it felt like an ocean. The twins got a warehouse for their brand. Divine started touring during school breaks. Rosemary walked through the quiet hallways and missed the noise, missed the mess. She repainted, planted flowers, took long walks, and waited for their return. They always came back, not just on holidays, on Wednesdays for soup, on Sundays for gospel and rice, on random Tuesdays with dirty laundry or questions, about taxes or hugs that lasted too long for boys too grown to hug. One day, she opened the front door and found Joshua and Joseph standing there with a full box of cookies. "We baked. You?" "Well, we bought dough and burned the first batch. But this second one," Joshua added, "is only slightly overcooked." She laughed so hard she had to sit down. One evening, Henry called from campus. "Mama, I'm presenting my senior project this week. I want you there." "Me?" "You. I'm not an engineer. You're the reason I am." She took the train, sat in the front row, watched her first son talk about sustainable architecture like it was poetry. When he finished, he looked straight at her. She nodded, tears in her eyes. He smiled. Another Sunday, Kenneth arrived with a printed article. "Look, they wrote about me." She read it twice, then folded it and tucked it in her Bible. "Did you like it?" "I loved it. I didn't mention you. You didn't have to." He leaned over, kissed her cheek. "Next one, you're the headline." Divine recorded, a song dedicated to her, "For the woman who built me." When it played on the radio, Rosemary stood in the kitchen and just listened. Not dancing, not singing, just still. The twins opened their first storefront. At the grand opening, they made a speech. Joseph said, There wouldn't be two kings without the queen who raised us, Joshua added. And she still makes the best jollof rice in the world. The crowd cheered. Rosemary blushed. Late one night after everyone had gone, Rosemary sat alone at the kitchen table, tea cooling beside her, music low in the background. She looked around. The walls were the same, the dishes, the smell of fabric softener and cinnamon. But the air had changed. They weren't boys anymore. They were men. But she wasn't just their past. She was their home. And that, she realized, would never change. Rosemary's 60th birthday began like any other day. Quiet, with the smell of ginger tea and a breeze slipping through the living room window. She hadn't made any plans. Birthdays didn't hold much weight for her anymore. A simple breakfast, maybe some laundry, and perhaps a call. Or two from her boys if they remembered. She didn't expect anything extravagant. She didn't expect them. It started with a knock at the door, then 5 knocks, then laughter. When she opened it, there they stood. Henry, Kenneth, Joshua, Joseph, and Divine. Grown, glowing, and grinning like children about to reveal a prank. "What are you all doing here?" She gasped, eyes flicking from one face to another, trying to believe they were real. "Happy birthday, Mama," Henry said, stepping forward with a box wrapped in white cloth. Rosemary blinked. "You didn't need to—" "We know," Kenneth interrupted. "You always say that. But today you don't get to say no." Divine smiled. Joshua and Joseph stepped aside in perfect twin synchronization, revealing a silver van parked at the curb, and then Henry placed the cloth-wrapped box in her hands. "Open it," he said. Inside was a key, heavy, silver, attached to a ribbon the color of sunflowers. Rosemary looked at it, confused. "What's this?" "A new chapter," Kenneth said. They drove in silence, her hands gripping the key as if it might disappear. The van turned down unfamiliar roads, across the edge of town, and finally onto a driveway she'd never seen before. There, it stood, a house. Not just any house, a home, custom-built in every sense. White walls gleaming in the sunlight, windows wide and open like arms waiting to hold her. The front yard had a garden, already blooming with roses, her favorite. The boys watched her as she stepped out of the van, frozen in place. "We built it," Divine said softly. "For you, for us." Rosemary felt her knees weaken. Joseph rushed to her side. "Careful, Queen, your crown's about to slip." She let them lead her inside. Every room held a memory. The living room walls were lined with framed photos, first days of school, talent shows, birthday cakes barely holding candles upright, a kitchen large enough to cook for an army with copper pots already hanging, 5 bedrooms for visits, 1 master suite with an oversized armchair by the window, a piano in the corner, a shelf filled with books she'd once read to them, in the back, a garden bursting with life, tomatoes, herbs, mango trees just beginning to sprout. They'd thought of everything, even the scent. Lavender and spice was her. "Do you like it?" Henry asked. She turned to look at them, tears threatening. "You did this for me?" Kenneth stepped forward, holding a thick folder. "There's more." "Oh, Lord," she whispered, overwhelmed. Inside were legal documents, not just house deeds. A trust fund, created and contributed to by all 5 of them, enough to cover medical bills, travel, renovations, even a business venture if she wanted. "We wanted you to have peace," Divine said. "You gave us life. We want you to live now." She couldn't speak. Instead, she reached for them. They came like magnets, no hesitation. All 5 surrounding her, arms wrapping tight, their adult bodies still folding into her like the little boys they once were. She sobbed in the middle of the living room, her tears falling on Henry's shoulder, Kenneth's back, Joshua's arm, Joseph's cheek, Divine's hair, No words, just love, full, impossible love. Later that evening, Rosemary sat on the porch of her new home, watching the sky fade into orange. Henry joined her, sitting with the quiet comfort of someone who had nothing left to prove. "You didn't have to," she said softly. "We wanted to. I didn't expect anything." "You gave everything," he said. "We just remembered." She looked at him, truly looked. The same boy who once guarded his brothers like a soldier now looked at her like she was the center of his universe. "We couldn't have made it without you," she swallowed. "I'm proud of who you are. I'm proud of who you made me." The next morning, she found little surprises everywhere. In the kitchen drawer, a note from Kenneth. Labeled everything, just like you like it. In the guest room, a framed sketch from Divine. 5 boys holding a crown above her head. In the closet, matching aprons from the twins. One read Mama, the other General. When she stepped outside, she saw a plaque by the rose garden, "To the woman who built a kingdom from nothing." That night they cooked together like old times. Rice, chicken, fried plantains. Divine played the piano while Joseph burned the first batch. Kenneth documented everything on his phone. Henry sliced onions with tears in his eyes. Joshua claimed it was because of the onions. They ate outside under string lights, laughter echoing through the air. For dessert, Divine brought out a small cake. 6 candles. "Why 6? Rosemary asked. "One for each of us," Henry replied. "You're part of us too," Joshua added. "Always were," said Kenneth. When it came time to blow out the candles, she paused. "Make a wish," Divine whispered. She didn't need to. It had already come true. It started with a group chat titled Operation Royal Wedding. Joshua created it. Joseph changed the icon to a cartoon crown. Kenneth posted an emoji schedule. Henry added a spreadsheet. Divine suggested, "They all get married at once." "At the same time?" Rosemary had asked, one brow raised. "Same day. 5 grooms, 5 brides, 1 celebration." Joshua grinned. "That's ambitious." "It's perfect," Divine said. "And overdue. They called it the coronation. The planning took months. Tailors measured, venues were scouted, dishes were debated. Rosemary tried to stay out of the chaos, but the boys wouldn't allow it. "You're the queen," Henry said. "Nothing happens without your blessing." She watched with wonder as her sons, boys who once scraped knees and broke windows, transformed into men juggling guest lists, florists, playlists, seating charts. The brides were kind, smart, independent. Each one met with Rosemary alone, asked for advice, listened with hearts wide open. "I'm not your mother," she said to one gently. "You're the reason he loves the way he does," the bride replied. "So yes, you are." The wedding was held in a large garden near the coast, where the wind kissed everyone's cheeks and the sun showed up right on time. 5 altars, 5 paths, 5 sets of flowers, rings, vowels, promises, and 1 throne. Literally, a white and gold chair placed at the center of the aisle, reserved for Rosemary. When she arrived, escorted by all 5 sons, the entire crowd stood. Gasps, applause, then silence as the master of ceremonies raised his hand. "Before we celebrate these 5. Men," he said, "we honor the woman who made them." Rosemary's throat tightened. She wasn't ready, but maybe she never would be. One by one, the sons spoke. "Henry, she gave us rules, then taught us how to break them with grace. Kenneth, she saw what no one else did, and never stopped. Seeing it, Joseph, she let us be wild but never lost control. Joshua, she gave us laughter on the days we deserved none. Divine, she sang us back to life." Then the brides added their vows, not just to their partners, but to the family they were joining. "To Mama Rose," one said, Thank you for raising kings." The crowd clapped, then stood, then cried. Rosemary did too. The rest of the day was a blur of color and joy. Suits, silks, smiles, children chasing bubbles, plates clinking, toasts rising. Photos captured every angle. The 5 grooms dancing with their mother, the brides hugging her like sisters, the grandkids playing in the grass. Her face appeared in newspapers, on social media, on the cover of a community magazine. The woman who raised kings. Messages poured in, interviews requested. A publisher offered her a book deal. She declined politely. "I didn't do it for stories," she said. "I did it for them." Life didn't slow down after the wedding. If anything, it became louder. Sunday lunches were non-negotiable. Every week, her home filled with voices, pots clanging, music playing. Grandkids spilled juice, crawled under tables, turned pillows into forts, argued over toys. Henry brought his twins, stern but sweet, like their father. Kenneth arrived with books for every child. Joshua and Joseph dressed, theirs in coordinated outfits, arguing about which print was better. Divine came late, always, guitar slung over his shoulder, singing lullabies with the kids in his lap. They called her Mama Rose. The neighbors called her the Mother of Kings. One afternoon, Divine sat with her in the garden, guitar resting across his legs. "Do you ever wish things had been different?" he asked. She didn't answer right away, just reached for a rose and twirled its stem. "I used to," she said, "when I was younger. I wanted a quiet life, a husband, maybe 2 kids. Less noise, less work," she smiled. But that dream was too small. He nodded, strumming lightly. "We needed you. I needed you more." Sometimes she sat alone at night just for a moment, just long enough to think. She thought of the note her husband left decades ago. She thought of the little boys sitting in mismatched shoes, full of fear and silence. She thought of her hands, now lined, now softer, and how they'd held scraped knees and wedding bouquets. Her life had not gone as planned. It had gone better. On her 65th birthday, she woke up to a lawn full of signs. Happy. "Birthday, Mama Rose. Queen of our hearts. The reason we know how to love." She opened the front door and found Divine waiting with a grin and a guitar. "Ready for your concert?" "I'm not performing." "No," he said. "We are." He led her to the backyard where her sons stood in line, each holding an instrument, awkward and offbeat. Divine strummed the first chord. The rest followed with barely passable rhythm. It was terrible. It was beautiful. Later, as the sun dipped and the laughter softened, Rosemary sat in her garden, her kingdom. She watched her family, scattered across the yard like a mosaic of blessings, and felt something deeper than peace. Legacy, love that outlived pain, purpose born from ashes. She hadn't just raised boys, she had raised kings. If you made it to the end, comment the word royal, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with friends and family.